with this incredible, I don't want to say purity of vision because it's more expansive, but consistency of vision, following your own vision for years. So I kind of wanted to put it out there that I don't think it's a comeback as much as why did it take so long for the rest of us, or the kind of male-dominated, trophy-obsessed art world to catch on? You know, it took a while. And there is a question in here which has to do with persistence of vision. How, any advice for someone else who seemed at some point, Lita, you were out of step with your time because women weren't being taken seriously, even when you were one of the artists on the board at MoCA early on. Spirituality.
Can't use that word.
Can't use what word?
Spiritual.
Yeah. I almost jumped on it, right? I don't use that word. But yeah, now it is a different moment. We think about O.F. Clint and so many artists that in her case, it really is truly a rediscovery. What advice would you give to other artists who are out of step at some point in their times? How do you preserve your vision? How do you persist in the face of maybe disgust or disinterest or dismissal?
Yeah, I think especially if you have dismissal, if you have disinterest, you just say, I have got to pursue what I do. I mean, there's nothing more important than what I have to do. If no one's interested in it now, it doesn't matter. Just to go ahead, just keep at it. Now, obviously, that you can say that it's not the easiest thing to do, and that's where you do get mentors. That is where you get people to help you. But it's really the thing is of just really believe in yourself. Believe in what everybody has a different voice. Everybody has a voice. Everybody has an expression. Every single person, every single thing in the universe, right? So the hardest thing to do is to express it. And I think we all struggle with that. That's a human condition. But the thing to do is to absolutely, you have to believe that no matter how much no one's paying attention, no matter what you're doing is important for you. I do have a little theory I call it the theory of the obvious, that I don't always listen to. That is, whenever you say you're doing something and you say, oh, this is stupid, you know, what I'm doing is stupid, oh, this is childish, that is actually your gift. Because to you, it's childish, to you, it's so obvious, it's obvious. But nobody else has that, so that is what you pursue, what seems so obvious to you, so childish is the gift. And that's another advice I would give. Always know that you have that.
Thank you. And it seems to me that one of the things that has had, one thing that has to be a challenge in their work is that so much of their work is ephemeral. This included. What's going to happen to this tonight?
Well, hopefully the museum will buy it. Possibly. Exactly. But we're actually filming tomorrow. But this will be, it's the protocol, we'll put it away and we'll have it so if anyone is in any institution is interested, they can then recreate it. And that's something new.
That's what we talked about this a little.
Yeah.
This idea of recreating your work.
Yes.
It did not come naturally or easily to you. In some ways, it took me a while before she came to the idea that she needed to recreate.
Exactly. I mean, when you think of curators and they do retrospectives, it's easy. It's paintings. It's not easy, but there's paintings they have. But when you do ephemeral works, you have to completely recreate them. And at first it was hard for me because the context is always different. And then when I realized, oh, wait a minute, this is, as in a retrospective, you have to see the work. I just came back from Paris this afternoon, actually, where we recreated the Washington Monument, which was, we can recreate, it's an archive, a project I did in 1980. And it was amazing to see how many people were inspired by it. And, you know, we're talking about 44 years years ago. So the idea, as an artist, of course, that's what I want. I want people to know the work. And it's really the last 2 years, there have been a lot of interest. I think it has a lot to do with where we're at as a planet. That the Earth is becoming something that we do need to care for. People are getting more and more interested in land art, and it now makes sense to see that kind of work. And people, it speaks to people, and it's really fascinating to me. But to have that kind of, in 2 years, to have, there was a show at the National Museum, then a show in a big gallery in Brussels, and then we did with Malibu Line, and then again the Washington Monument, and here. And it's really wonderful that the timing is right. Yeah.
And Earth Scan seems important to me for the reasons you mentioned. It also has a bridge kind of work. You know, I'm going to mention the bridge as well. With some bridge between the earthworks out there in the desert or in the landscape and to do earthwork in the gallery. Do you want to talk about that? You have the impulse to do an earthwork in a gallery as opposed to...
Yeah, it's a very different kind of impulse. I mean, when I did the earthworks out in nature, it really had to do with doing a gesture in this kind of context and what would happen to the context by having this color kind of gesture. Doing it in a gallery space, especially Earth Skin for me, bringing in the earth into the gallery makes it into a sacred space, into a sacred piece. And I think it's the idea that the earth is sacred in this particular case because it is so pure. I decided not to do any drawings on it. I do think in terms of the earth as a canvas, you know, but this is the purity of just observation. In fact, the reason to do it in this gallery now was because of PhD, and art and science collide. The idea in this case was observation. How much many scientists do spend time, observing this kind of molecular and materiality from outer space, right here, geology, astrophysics, all of that. So it's that combination of that. Yeah, so it's also to bring it to others. And Malibu Line was one of the rare things for me to see viewers actually see the piece, because most of them have been done in remote sites, and to have that kind of audience respond and be affected by it. And it's really, really magical.
That seems retrospective to be the best way, the best sense of that word,
Yes.
that you're reflecting on something.
Yes.
In your own history.
Yes.
Maybe. Speaking of history, we have one other topic, which is Caltech.
Yes.
Which I haven't seen yet, so maybe you can tell me about it and everyone here who will have plenty of time to see it.
Sure. So this is part of the PhD, and this kind of set Caltech, which interestingly enough, Caltech had a gallery, a Baxter Art Gallery, and it was the very first time I ever exhibited. Von Spector here, who is the curator of this show called Crossing Over, and she invited me to be part of the show. And I happened to show at Caltech 50 years ago as my first show ever, and so we also celebrated that. What the piece is called "This Moment in Time," and I've done a lot of research on the state of California for another project I did, and it turned out that 2 astrophysicists from Caltech received the Nobel Prize for their nucleosynthesis theory, which is about the explosion of supernova forming solar systems and planets, and that the heavy elements like gold comes from that kind of explosion. So it was an homage to them. So I've gold-leafed an entire, it's what would you call it, a bridge over a large pond, 10 feet by 60 feet. And it's gold-leaf, and so what happens is the kind of gold-leaf that I decided not to completely make it smooth so that it flutters, and so the wind comes and it looks like a wheat field at times.
I saw a video. So I can't wait to see it in person. In gold, I wrote about ultramarine in your work.
Yes.
We've got a couple different forms already, and the big message, but gold is also important.
Yes.
Signaling spirituality, alchemy, what are the associations of gold for you?
It's light, like it's one of the first. Yeah, light. That's the one I'm mainly interested in.
It's light and material form.
And yes, the immateriality from the material. Right? There's nothing more material than gold, and yet when you look at it, it becomes immaterial when it becomes in an artwork.
Liquid light.
Liquid light. That's another project.
Yeah, you said, and you said, I want to follow up on this, you're working on a sequel.
Yes.
So we have not seen the last of the 25th century astronaut, we've seen work.
Yes.
Can you tell us anything about what's to come for our 25th century astronaut?
Okay, it's in progress. It's going to be called Everything is Light, and it's the last of the trilogy. And it also involves a whole story of a scientist who is from the 28th century, who is obsessed with figuring out light within matter. And he meets this woman through time. And this woman happens to be the 25th century female astronaut. And one of the paintings here, the title is dedicated to the story where, I'm giving it up, but at the end, he's in a canyon, large canyon in Central Africa, and she's dying, and as he's holding her, she leaves, and what's left is her translucent skin, and on her skin are the screens of the history of the world.
So wonderful. I want to say thank you, Lita, for this conversation, and thank you for your work, which is a gift. I think so many people agree. And then we'll open it up for conversation. But first, thank you.
Thank you very much.